a change in, whenever there will be a change in aggregate demand and aggregate supply, it will be, it will shift the aggregate demand. So downward sloping is your aggregate demand like this, upward sloping is your aggregate supply, right? So wherever the two intersect, just a second, that would be your macroeconomic equilibrium, right? And on the other hand, for supply side policies, it's the aggregate supply that shifts. So what are supply side policies? Supply side policies are any government initiatives that are taken to increase the productivity of the business and to, to increase the production potential. So that will cause a rightward shift in aggregate supply. So that is supply side policies. Is it making sense, students? Is this simple? Is this easy? Goes down and this goes here. Okay, I want to do a question from October, November 19 as a question. Okay, just give me a second, man. October, November, you said October, November 19. October, November 19, October, November 18, and May, June 18, 19. And sorry, let me read it again. You said October, November 19. October, November 19. So this is October, November 19. Is it 4-2? Is the variant 4-2? Okay, yeah, which question? Tell me the question number. Okay, fine. So these are all the questions. Which one? This is October, November 19. Then it must be another variant. (3B). Okay. Discuss how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect a consumer's demand. Okay. Okay. Discuss how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect a consumer's demand. Okay, perfect. Okay, shall we get down to this? Is this the question that you want me to do? Isha? Okay, great, perfect. So students, let's read the question together and then we'll do this one first. And then if you have any other question, then we'll do those, or we will, randomly choose a question and we'll start answering that. Okay. Now discuss how government policies. Now, first part is very important. It tells you what is the question about, right? So the A part was explain what is meant by normal good and comment on the link between total utility, marginal utility, and consumers' demand curve for that product. So this question, by reading A part, you can tell that this question is about consumer equilibrium. Now, what is consumer equilibrium? You will remember we talked about that in unit 2, where we looked at that there is budget line. Budget line is a graph that tells you how much a consumer can afford, and then you have indifference curve that show you what are consumers' preferences. So on the y-axis you have units of y, how many units of good y, or whatever you can think of, right? If you don't want to say units of y, you can say units of Coke. And on the x-axis, you can take another good. So how many units of, let's say, chocolates someone can afford, right? Okay, now what you do basically in this consumer equilibrium, first of all, you draw the budget line. How do you draw the budget line? Budget line is always down sloping. So to draw the budget line, you need to have certain pieces of information. So let's say, first thing that you need to know is how much is the consumer's income, right? I'm just giving you a quick overview and then I'll tell you how the question has to be solved. So how much is the consumer's income? Then you have to know the price of chocolates, right? So let's say the price of each unit of chocolate is $5 and the price of each unit of Coke is $2. Are you getting me, students? Okay, so let's assume, what is this point? This point shows that consumer is spending all of his income on chocolates. Consumer is spending all of his income on chocolates. So if 100 is his income, if 100 is person's income, and you have $5 per chocolate, so that gives you how much? So the maximum quantity of chocolates that you can afford is 20. Students, are you following me? So the maximum quantity of chocolates that you can afford with this is 20, right? So you will have 20 on the x-axis. Similarly, if you spend all of your income on Coke, right, this means that 100 divided by 2 will give you how much? 50. So the maximum units of Coke that you can buy would be 50 units. Yes or no? Is this making sense? So you will have 50 units over here and 20 units over here. So this is your budget line. This is how you draw the budget line. Budget line shows you what bundle. Why I'm saying bundle? Because it's not one good, it's two goods. You have Cokes and you have chocolates, right? So which bundles of the product are affordable for the consumer and which bundles are not affordable? Which bundles are affordable by the consumer and which bundles are not affordable? Is this making sense, students? Okay, now any point on the budget line shows that you are fully utilizing your income. Please pay attention. So any point A, B, D, E, F, right? So as long as a point is on the budget line, it shows that you're fully utilizing your income. Any point within the curve shows that you're saving something. You're not fully utilizing, you're saving something. And obviously any point outside the curve is not even achievable because you don't have enough income. Okay. Now coming back to the question, and then let me quickly show you that what was the indifference curve. So I said there will be unlimited amount of indifference curve, and one indifference curve will be tangent to your budget line, right? One indifference curve will be tangent to your, sorry about that. So one indifference curve will be tangent to your budget line like this, somewhere over here, and then so on and so forth. Right? Now, what is budget line showing you? Sorry, indifference curve. So the curves that I'm making on the graph right now, they are known as indifference curve. Indifference curve show you consumer preferences. What do indifference curves show? Indifference curves show you consumer preferences between two goods. And on one indifference curve, the total utility of a consumer is constant. On one particular indifference curve, have a look at this. Let me show you like this. On one particular indifference curve, no matter what point you choose, consumers' utility will be constant. Have a look at this. So if you're choosing point A, or you're choosing point B, or you're choosing point C, so what it shows is that whether you operate on point A, or you operate on point B, or you operate on point C, your total utility is staying the same. Your total utility is staying the same. This is making sense, right? And this is the equilibrium point, which will show you what? Which will show you how many units of chocolate will the consumer consume, and let's say, and how many units of Coke the consumer will consume, right? Okay, now knowing this, students, let's go back and let's look at the question exactly. So this was just a recap to get you started. What is the question saying? Consider how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect consumers' demand. Now have a look at this. Since consumer equilibrium is part of our syllabus, is part of our A2 syllabus, so you can't just say that, when consumers, when government provides subsidies, or let's say when government give tax holidays, or tax exemptions, then that will increase the demand, because this was something that we learned in AS. Students, are you following? First thing that you need to remember is that anything that you have learned in A2 has to be applied to the question that you attempt in paper 4, right? So for A2 questions, exams, you have to put the knowledge of the A2 topics and all that stuff. Is this making sense, students? Okay. Now think about this. So what the question actually wants you to do is to explain with the help of consumer equilibrium that how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect consumers' demand. Now, first question I want to ask you that what is income and wealth distribution? How does that happen? So do you remember? Again, this is not what you have to write. You just need to tell, but I'm just showing you what income distribution is. So if you remember, we talked about that. So government take taxes from the rich and then give it to the poor in the form of transfer payments. This process, this entire process is basically known as income and wealth distribution. Why is government doing that? Government's trying to take some money from the rich who already have a lot of income and then give it to the poor in the form of transfer payments. How do transfer payments operate? Like if I have to give you a simple example, like unemployment benefits, child support programs, and all that stuff, right? Now, first of all, to control poverty, reduce poverty, exactly. First thing that you have to do in this question is to explain what income and wealth distribution is, right? So for income and wealth distribution, people will tax the rich people and will give it to the poor in the form of transfer payments. After you've explained this, Isha, are you following? After you have given the basic definition, you can also rely on this graph, but obviously you have to explain in words as well, that government takes taxes from the rich and give it to the poor in the form of transfer payments, right? And then you can perhaps just take names of few type of taxes that are imposed in every country, like income taxes, property tax, GST, general sales tax, indirect taxes, and what are the transfer payments, the money that the government is giving to the poor people in the form of unemployment benefits, or a child support program, or income support program, and so on and so forth, right? Okay, after this, what you have to do now comes in the main part. Students, please pay attention. Now, there will be two types of people, basically. There will be two types of people. One would be the rich, on whom government is imposing taxes. Now, listen to me very carefully. So, whenever government is introducing income and wealth distribution mechanism, so there will be few people who will be paying the taxes, and there will be few people who are receiving the transfer payments. Yes or no? There are few people who are paying the taxes, and there are few people who are receiving the transfer payments and so on. Is this making sense? Not more than that. No, not more than that. That what is income inequality? No. So that is beyond the scope of this question, right? Pensions can be considered transfer payments. Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Pensions are transfer payments. That's more of social security. Pensions are basically transfer payments. That's an interesting question, because even for pensions, the thing is that most of the times, not always, but some part of your salary is deducted so that the government can pay you pension even when you have retired. And pensions are provided in full, what is that called, in the government organizations and in armed services and so on. Basically, government organizations. Pension is not a concept in private sector. So, I mean, it's more of a social security, I would say, right? So social security has a broader concept. So transfer payments is just targeted at the poor people. Are you getting me? Arbab? So social security, I wanted, right? Social security is for all the people, whether they're rich or poor, right? So that also includes old age people. That also includes, disadvantaged people. So not directly, pensions would not be directly part of the transfer payments, but yes, as this bigger scheme of things, you can say that, because that is again for the benefit, pensions are for the benefit of, disadvantaged, not disadvantaged, but people who need more financial support when they have retired from an organization and so on. Okay, now have a look at this. Students, so basically there are two types of people. There are two types of people. One, on whom the government will impose taxes, they can be defined as the rich people, right? And then another group would be of poor people who are receiving transfer payments. Are you getting me or not? Right? So people, if we think about the rich people, first of all, right? What would that do? What would that do, right? So we're just looking at the budget line, right? So let's say these are the quantities that you can afford with the values that we assume that income, let's say, is equivalent to $50, and the price of each unit of Coke is equals to, let's say, $2, and the price of each unit of chocolate, is equals to $5 and so on and so forth. Is it simple, right? Okay, now this being said, okay, have a look at this. So when government take taxes from the rich, what would that do? Students, when government takes taxes from the rich, sorry, income was 100. Income is not 50, income was 100, right? So when government take taxes from the rich, do you think that would reduce their incomes? When government is taxing, imposing more income taxes on the rich, right? That would reduce their income. So your new budget line would be to the left of it. Your new budget line would be to the left of it. Is this making sense or not? Right? Sometimes it's a parallel shift, but because income is decreasing, it will be a parallel shift. When is it not a parallel shift? When there's change in the prices of the good, that is when it's not a parallel shift. But in this case, it will be a parallel shift because income is, let's say, if government is charging $20 as taxes now, so the final income would be $80. Students, are you following me or not? Now with $80, how many units of chocolates can you afford if the price of each unit of chocolate is $5? right? So 5 divided by 80, sorry, 80 divided by 5 gives you how much? Only 14. Sorry, 16. 5 under 5 and yeah, 16. Yeah, right? So the maximum quantity of chocolates that this person can now afford is 16. And what is the maximum quantity of Coke that this person can afford? If each unit of Coke is for $2, the maximum that you can afford is 40, right? So can you see that there has been a parallel shift in the budget line, right? Because government is charging taxes. What happens? Look at the question. What happens? Discuss how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect the consumer. So over here, what we are talking about, we are assuming that this graph that we are making is for the rich guy. So if previously your income was $100, now let's say government has imposed a tax, 20% tax rate, exactly, income tax. So that reduces your income to only $80. Is making sense? Now we did the new calculation. The maximum quantity of chocolates that you can afford with $80 is 16, and the maximum quantity of Coke that you can afford with $80 is 40. So your budget line has shifted parallel leftwards, right? Now, what effect would that have? What effect would that have on your consumer equilibrium? So let's say consumer was previously, let's say this is consumer equilibrium 1. Initially, consumer was consuming at this point. Initially, consumer was consuming at this point, right? Where let's say consumer was consuming, let's say, I don't know, 8 units of chocolates and 35 units of Coke. Now, with the new budget line, obviously your indifference curve would also, you would move to a lower indifference curve, and your new equilibrium point would be over here, where indifference curve and budget line are tangent, right? So that would mean what? That both, most probably, consumption of both the goods would decrease. Consumption of both the goods would decrease, right? Students, are you getting me or not? So with income and wealth redistribution, the rich people will be at a disadvantage because government is taking some chunk of their income away from them, and now their consumption would reduce. Does it make sense? Their consumption would reduce. On the other hand, for the poor people, think about it. On the other hand, what would happen to the income of poor people? Students, are you following me or not? How many of you got understood what I explained you just right now? So on the other hand, for the poor people, government will be paying them some income support program. Through some income support program, they will be paying them just like we have Benazir income support program in Pakistan. So families with incomes below a certain threshold are paid financial payments by the government, right? So with that happening, right, the budget line will shift. The budget line will shift rightwards, outwards, right? Okay, have a look at this. How many of you are understanding this? Isha and Bob, are you understanding me or not? Right? So that will cause an outward shift in the budget line, because now poor people are not only consuming their own income, but they're also getting support. But they're also getting support from the government, right? So if previously your equilibrium point was this much, where let's say the poor guy was consuming X1 units of chocolates and let's say Y1 units of Coke, now with the budget line shifting outwards, you can afford more, obviously, right? Because it's not just the income of the poor person, it's also the financial support that the government is making available to these people, right? So your equilibrium point moves from this E1 to E2, more consumption. Yes or no? Right. So have you heard of Benazir Income Support Program? By the way, the new name for that is National Income Support Program. So in National Income Support Program, what happens actually is that the poorest families in Pakistan, government already has data for those income support program. So government every month, right? So there is a complete criteria that your income should be below a certain threshold and so on and so forth, right? So very poorest families in Pakistan, Sindh, and places like that. So they provide them financial support. This is the most direct transfer payment that the government is making. But we know obviously Pakistan doesn't has a lot of other things like developed countries have, which includes unemployment benefits or child support program and so on, right? So this is what you have to explain. And now let's see what else the marking scheme has to say, right? So this was 3B. Okay, discuss how government policies towards income and wealth distribution can affect consumers' demand, right? So a considerable consideration of the impact of taxation, government transfer payments, and or other government policies on income and wealth, and hence the budget line and demand. Consideration of the effect of taxation on wealth and consumption, effects on changes in wealth, consideration of difference in the income effect for normal and inferior goods, right? Now, one thing that we did not mention over here is that the difference between normal and inferior goods. Normal and inferior goods. Do you remember what's the difference is? So let's look at this one more time. We did talk about in our classes that normal good, whenever the income increase, normal good have direct relationship with incomes, right? So higher the income, higher the consumption of normal good, right? So most products that you see around are normal goods. So for instance, let me give you an example. So if you have more income, then you will most probably buy more clothes, you will buy more fuel because you will be traveling here and there. You buy more expensive goods, good quality, right? Exactly. Right? And then there is inferior goods. So with inferior good, the idea is different. Higher the incomes, lower the demand for inferior goods, right? Higher the incomes, lower the demand for inferior goods. Why? Because now you have incomes to afford better quality products, right? So why would you want to why would you want to higher income, lower consumption? Why would you want to higher income, lower consumption? So now with more incomes, why would you want to spend your money on lower quality products, right? So inferior goods, the relationship is opposite, right? And in the end, what you need to say in this question that for the poor people, definitely the consumption would increase. Definitely the consumption would increase because their incomes are increasing. Students, are you getting me or not? So what happens when someone's income increase? We just talked about that, right? At the start of the question, we talked about it that when your incomes are increasing, when quantity of good X, whatever it is, right? So whenever your income is increasing, that will cause a rightward shift in your demand curve. We know this through AS level. And on the other hand, for the rich person, the demand will decrease because now government is charging more taxes and things like that. Have a look at this. So you have price on the y-axis and you have quantity of the good on the x-axis. So the way we will show that is that there will be an inward shift in the demand for, or leftward shift in the demand for the rich people, and an outward shift or an increase in the demand for the poor people, right? Does it make sense? Any confusion, students? Anything that's not clear? So do you have any other questions? Isha, you have any other questions, or else we will we'll choose a question of our own and then attempt that. Okay, perfect. So just a second. Then what should we do? Do you want me to do a case study? We can quickly do a case study in the remaining time. So, and then for the case study, we should ideally choose any paper that's not very recent. What do you guys think? Okay, let's do a case study then. Let's say March. So March component is not available in Pakistan, but obviously March component is available in other countries, including India. Okay, so students, let's read the question case study together and then we come to the answer. It's a relatively longer one, but no problem. Okay. Finance ministers and economic power. The power of finance ministers to make a difference to an economy is exaggerated. Political parties would argue that finance ministers have the ability to form policies that lead to the creation of jobs, building of houses, encouragement of economic growth. The reality is that finance ministers are usually at the mercy of the economy rather than in control of it. The finance ministers has a limited macroeconomic range of policy measures. Interest rates, bond markets, international trade markets, company investment policies, and change in consumer spending are far more important than finance ministers in shaping the economy and determining total revenue. Let's read this paragraph one more time. Finance minister has limited macroeconomic range of policy measures. Interest rates, bond markets, international trade markets, company investment policies, and change in consumer spending are far more important than finance ministers in shaping the economy and determining tax revenue. Consider monetary policy. This is often controlled by central banks. In 2015, there were low interest rates much of the world, right? It's talking about 2015. These lower borrowing costs could encourage firms to invest, and this may result in increased employment. These lowest borrowing costs could encourage firms to invest and lead to increased employment. Statistics for employment and the level of interest rates for India from 2010 to 2014 are given in figure below 1. Unemployment rate is the gray area, the bars, and this is the interest rate. So when interest rate is decreasing, I will look at the students. So it's really important that you understand the graph as well. So I will look at this. This was your unemployment rate. In both years, 2010, 2011, the interest rate was, unemployment rate was constant at 9.4%. And similarly, you can see that interest rate was also kind of that. But then interest rate decreased. When interest rate decreased, can you see that unemployment also decreased, right? Unemployment fell from 9.4 to 6.3. And then it was constant, a slight decrease in unemployment as well. And then, back to that, right? Are you getting me? So basically the two things are going in proportion. So lower the interest rate, lower will be the unemployment rate. And why is that so? Students, are you getting me? Statistics, right? So if interest rates are low, then companies, we have always talked about this, that and companies will invest more because, borrowing is cheaper and all that stuff. So they will invest more in all that stuff. And therefore, when there will be more investment, there will be more jobs and unemployment has to decrease. Easy? Is this simple? Any confusion so far? Okay, now the next thing it says, in international trade markets, some economies improved in 2015 because of the halving of the crude oil price, a benefit for companies and households with an effect on inflation that allowed interest rates to stay low. So it's saying that because crude oil prices, like the raw oil, right, through which we make diesel and through which we make petroleum and petroleum products and all that. So in the international markets, some economies improved in 2015 because halving. So the crude oil price almost halved. A benefit for companies and households with an effect on inflation that allowed interest rates to stay low. So it's saying that since oil prices were low, inflation rates were also low. However, part of the benefit of such a change in general price level would be short term if prices recover. Exactly, right? So as soon as saying, this line is saying that if oil prices recover, then automatically the general price level will also start to go up. Another influence on the economy can be high level of immigration, which could increase the working population. So what does immigration means? There are two types of immigration. Students, never get confused. So one immigration you will see with E. Now this immigration means that people are going out of the country. Immigration with an E, you can remember this as exit. E stands for exit. Exit means that people are going out of the country. And the other one, exactly, the immigration with an I means that people are coming in the country, in your country. Right now, what does it say? Another influence on economy can be high level of immigration, which could increase the working population, possibly increase employment production. Immigration is not controlled by finance ministers. So this entire case study is talking about how finance ministers have limited power to control, the economy and to improve the economic condition of an economy. Okay. Some consider that the best hope for improving an economy is on the supply side. Okay, supply side, I did mention that supply side policies are any initiatives taken by the government to improve the production potential. But, excuse me, but supply side policies are also often the responsibility of ministers other than the finance minister and take a long time to become effective. Yes, I did tell you a couple of times that I did tell you a couple of times that what is that called? Supply side policies are very time consuming. So it's not very easy to implement them, right? So you implement supply side policies and it take a long time before they show their effect on the economy. Then it says a further economic boost could be rise in house prices. So if house prices are rising, then that could boost economic activity. House price rises encourage consumers' confidence and stimulate retail sales. Moreover, house often result in redecoration, modernization, and the purchase of household items. However, house prices or the corresponding rent increases can sometimes be out of proportion to wage rates and make it impossible for many people to purchase property or to move. Right? Okay, but then house prices. So let's look at this one more time. A further economic boost could be rise in house prices. Now, this might sound very weird that what have house prices to do with economic activity? But as per the research, as the article says, house prices rise consumer confidence. House price rises encourage consumer confidence and stimulate retail sales. What are retail sales? Like the day-to-day things that we buy, like food and things like that. Moving house often results in redecoration. So when people move between homes, they have to often redecorate the new home. Modernization and the purchase of household items. However, house price rises or the corresponding rent increase can sometimes be out of proportion to wage rates and make it impossible for many people to purchase property or to move, obviously. So just imagine all the big cities in Pakistan, and that is true. And that is true for, what is that called? That is true for other countries as well. So New York, I mean, amazing, so it's very surprisingly expensive. And similarly, all the big cities. And similarly in Pakistan, in Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad, right? So these are all the challenges, right? So that needs to be taken care of. Okay, the information refers to supply side policies. The information refers to supply side policy. Explain with two examples what is meant by supply side policies. The information refers to supply side policies. Explain in two examples what is meant by supply side policies. So that should be simple. So for this, you will say that supply side policy is any government or initiative or project that increases the production potential, of an economy, right? Now, since the case study did not mention, this can be a supply side policy. Yes, it does mention. Why would immigration be a supply side policy? If more people are coming in your country, how is that a supply side policy? Can any one of you explain me that? Right? So that is one supply side policy. And the other one could be, what could be another supply side policy? More production of goods and services for them. Arbab, I did not get you. So you are saying that people who are coming to your country would have more goods and services. They would demand more goods and services. But what would help you to produce more goods and services? That is the supply side policy. So anything that helps you to produce more goods and services, that is the supply side policy. So let me give you. The case study already lists one of those with immigration. If more people are coming in, students, think about this. You have more labor force, right? You have more labor force, right? More labor force to work. And obviously they will be able to produce more, right? So that is one of the supply side policy. Then another one, more will increase supply. Exactly, right? So more workforce, more labor, and more output. Okay. Another thing that you can think of is, I mean, there are some other things which are not mentioned in the case study, but we can write, out of our own knowledge, which would be structural reforms. So let me tell you what are structural reforms. Structural reforms is that government make it easier for businesses to operate, right? Less taxes. In fact, more than taxes, they make it easier for them to register and provide them technical knowledge and things like that, right? So ease of doing business. Have you guys ever heard the word ease of doing business? So government makes it easier for new and existing businesses to operate, right? Not a lot of pressures and complications and, what is that called? Documentation and all that stuff, right? Then government can do other things like providing capital to new businesses. Because just imagine, what is one thing that really prevents new businesses from setting up? That is finance. So if they cannot raise finance, they can't raise the money to start their business either through banks or through government support. In fact, let me give you an example from Pakistan. So in case of Pakistan, this Imran Khan, the current government has Kamyab Jawan loan, and they have introduced these different things so that people have more finance to right. Yeah, sure. Oh, right. So the question was saying, what is meant, sorry, where did it go? The information so refers to supply side policy. Explain with two examples what is meant by supply side policy. So you have to define for 2 marks and then give 2 examples. So you could have said, immigration example is already provided. And then any other supply side policy that you know of, like training of workers could be one example. Giving finance and subsidies to businesses could be another example, right? Easy. Okay. Then the next question says, explain briefly the link between the rate of interest, investment, and employment. Consider whether this is supported by the information. So yes, we did look at this. When interest rate fell, when interest rate fell, unemployment fell. Because why? Businesses were taking more loans, they were investing and all that, and economic output, the GDP will also increase, right? So that is what you have to say. First, you can talk about journaling and then link it with the graph that is provided you over here, right? Okay, so the class might end, students, if in case it ends, so then we'll continue from here in the next class. So what year it is, do remember me. This is March, April, February, March 2017. Right? Okay. The information refers to rising house prices, and politicians sometimes say that such a rise is a sign of improvement in the economy. Analyze how the